let's start here. The Holy Father is waning in health,
Mhm.
and so what does that? What comes to your mind when that happens?
Well, of course, someone as old as the Holy Father is, that is 88 years old, and someone who has had a history lifelong of lung problems, is obviously in a difficult health situation with a serious respiratory infection like this. And so certainly the Vatican has not tried to hide the fact that this is a very, very serious situation. So what immediately comes to mind is the question of whether he will pull through this, A. And even if he does, B, will he be able to continue to carry out the duties that are associated with his office? So those are really the two questions, both about his health and survival. And then secondly, whether he would be able to return to the kind of schedule that the Holy Father typically keeps.
And there's a lot of talk about resignation. We're not there yet, but he appears to be in dire straits, at least health wise. Um, there is someone. Well, let me ask you this. We think in the Western world, we think of the Pope as one thing, but he is a global icon. How is he? What is his legacy ultimately? Let me start there.
Well, I think the Pope's legacy is in large part a real attention of the church to the needs and priorities of the global poor. He came into the papal office emphasizing the importance of the church's outreach to the poor, to people in the developing world. He also, while he has remained orthodox and consistent with the long-standing church teaching, he has pushed for a more open tone, at least, on a range of different questions. That has earned him both friends and enemies within the church, has won him accolades, but also expressions of concern from people in the church. But that would be his legacy, both that emphasis on the poor and that somewhat controversial doctrinal opening or muddling, depending on your own perspective.
The traditionalists do not like him. The people who are Jesuits, some people who you would consider probably fair weather Christians or fair weather Catholics love him because of his social justice component and his humility. Do you think these are all? My guess is people are going to be talking about these for the next few weeks, at least until this has happened.
Well, absolutely. And these issues will come to the floor. Sorry. Absolutely. These issues will come to the fore if and when it's time to have a papal succession, whether because the Pope has to step down or because he dies, whether that's in the short term, whether that's in the medium term, whenever that is. The discussion will center around whether the next Pope will try to push forward with that style and that legacy, or whether we would see a bit of a return to the kinds of emphases we saw under St. John Paul II, under Pope Benedict, who had the same core positions on the major elements of the faith, but very different emphases in terms of what were the most critical ways in which the church would address the world.
The Western world rarely has any say in any of this. It's the first time a pope from the Americas was brought to this position. Um, what I think it's neat that we have a local connection to Rome. And can you explain that now?
Yes, so Bishop Farrell was Bishop of the Diocese of Dallas. He's now Cardinal Farrell, and he's now working in Rome as what they call the Camerlengo, or in essence, the Chamberlain. That is one who helps to run the domestic affairs of the Vatican household. So that is an important day-to-day official position in Rome, in the Vatican. And so, yes, that is absolutely a high church official with Dallas ties who is now right there at the center of power and events as they play out in Vatican City.
There's nothing that says, and I've seen the movie The Conclave, where Ralph Fiennes, is one of the suitors to be Pope.
Mhm.
That's not a consideration here, right? That you understand.
I'm sorry, what is a consideration?
Bishop Farrell, Cardinal Farrell
Oh,
being
yeah.
Pope.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, one never knows. Okay, that is the church firmly believes that the selection of the Pope is open to the guidance of the Holy Spirit, and so it is not uncommon to end up getting people that no one saw coming, to end up getting popes that no one had predicted. That said, Cardinal Farrell is not one of the names that is most frequently mentioned as being kind of a leading contender for the papacy. Um, you never know which way the church and the cardinals would choose to go if and when it's time for a succession. But it would be pretty extraordinary for an American to be chosen. The thinking has been for a long time that cardinals from the United States face a real disadvantage in the conclave because a lot of people think that the US has too much power to begin with, and they don't need to give an American the throne of St. Peter. At least there are certainly cardinals who think that way.
My guess is it's the comforts of the Western world. Um, the yeah, we just have a lot of first world problems. I'm sure that they probably see there. Um,
That's right. But the question will be whenever it comes time to choose a new pope, do they go back to the tradition of forever of choosing European pontiffs, or do they once again reach out to the developing world? Pope Francis was a bit of a bridge between those two, right? Because he was from the Americas, but he was certainly of European ancestry, of Italian descent, Italian immigrants to Argentina. So he kind of straddled the gap between an old world pope and a new world pope. Uh, at some point, one has to expect that the church will move in the direction of choosing a pope from Africa or from Asia. Will it be the next pope? Who knows? But that's certainly something that people will be looking at.
Cardinal Farrell's position has accelerated very quickly since he left Dallas. He was appointed a cardinal for one. Now Camerlengo. What is it you think Pope Francis saw in him that the parishioners in Dallas probably also saw in him?
I think he saw him as a gifted administrator, as someone who gets along with people from a variety of different factions within the church, who's not regarded as a real ideological firebrand, either on the more conservative or the more progressive faction of the church. And so you put those things together, and it makes a good choice for an important Vatican official.
Yeah, and can you speak to just how important this position is?
Well, shrouded in mystery in the sense that different popes use their advisors differently. This is administratively very important in the sense that the this office is charged with kind of greasing the skids, making the trains run on time, doing a lot of the administrative business of the Vatican operation. Um, how much the person is listened to by the Pope in terms of doctrinal questions or weighty decisions of running the church, that really comes down to the individual relationship between the Pope himself and the Camerlengo. And so that can vary from papacy to papacy. And I'm not sure exactly how close that relationship is between Pope Francis and Cardinal Farrell.
Bishop Farrell at the time had to wade through some pretty polarizing stuff in his tenure here. One of them was putting out the list of abusive priests. Uh,
Mhm.
how much do you think that prepares him for this position?
Well, it's one of the most difficult things that the leader of any diocese has to do in terms of wrestling with and reckoning with clergy abuse. And certainly having gone through that, that tempered Bishop Farrell, now Cardinal Farrell, in the fires, and certainly means that he's no stranger to controversy. He's no stranger to difficult decisions. He's certainly familiar with this issue, which is one not only in the Diocese of Dallas, but in a lot of dioceses around the world, and the church writ large is having to deal with. So I think in that sense, having gone through that and having been, if not universally, at least widely praised for taking significant steps forward in terms of transparency on those issues, I think he was well positioned to speak to those kinds of concerns.
Matthew, you're awesome. There's a reason we
No,
come back to you over and over and over. I
oh,
really
no
appreciate
problem.
anything else. Anything else you want to add? Anything we haven't talked about?
Uh, I would just say that the Pope has understandably to this point been quite reluctant to entertain notions of resignation or any sort of transfer of power. We have to remember how extraordinary that would be. Uh, Pope Benedict did it, but prior to him, it had been centuries. It had been 500 years since a pope had ever relinquished the office prior to his death. So it would be an extraordinary step should we come to that pass. And I think that there are good reasons to expect that Pope Francis would not do that unless it were a truly, truly extraordinarily compromised health situation.
Do you think the college is mostly appointed by him, correct? By the Pope, correct? So do you think we go with somebody who is uh, an outlier like him, like another Jesuit? Or do you think I mean, nobody ever knows, but
Yeah,
crystal,
that's right. I mean, you don't know, but it is true that, like most pontiffs, they get to appoint a large portion of the people that will end up choosing their successor. And so that gives each pontiff, including Pope Francis, the opportunity to put a real imprint on the direction of the church going forward. That said, sometimes the conclave really surprises and chooses somebody who's an outlier. Moreover, it can be hard to predict what exactly any given person will do if you do elevate them to the throne of St. Peter. That is, people who might have been thought of as leaning in a more progressive direction or leaning in a more conservative direction, when the incredible spiritual weight and awesome responsibility of being the pontiff is placed upon them, how they react to that can sometimes be different than the way people might have predicted or expected.
this last question here. We live in the Bible Belt, and not that kind of Bible, right? So it's like
Mhm.
this is all alien to this is very foreign to a lot of people. This process, if it happens, thy will be done, as they say,
Mhm.
right? What do you want to remind the public as we enter possibly the final days of one pope, and ushering in another pope? Just for us to sort of remind ourselves that this is the way the Catholic faith does this, and this is the way the Holy Father is ultimately appointed.
Yeah, I would just remind people that the Catholic Church deeply believes that the Pope is the heir to St. Peter in an unbroken line of succession going all the way back to Jesus himself. And the principle of apostolic succession is at the core of the Catholic Church's teaching and identity. So it's a very, very important principle. Moreover, the Church deeply believes that the selection of a Pope is guided by the Holy Spirit, that it's not just a wheeling dealing political process. That is, obviously, there are human elements involved, but that ultimately this is a process by which God cares for his church. And so we can be tempted to analyze it in crassly political terms, but from a Catholic standpoint, that sort of analysis is very much incomplete.